Welcome to the Art of Life podcast. It's me, the Koi Fish Prophet, the Sensitive Sensei. Well, right now I'm in Mexico. I'm not in Mexico as I'm recording this episode, but I've decided to return to Mexico. So by the time this comes out, inshallah, God willing, I will be in Mexico. And here's why I decided to make that decision. And we're going to break down what went into making this decision, why I made it, because I think there's a lot of valuable lessons in this kind of leap of faith that I'm taking. So there's going to be, again, I talk about the human condition, there's hypocrisy, there's going to be some contradicting information, because I did say prior that you don't need to travel to get to know yourself. It's not necessary, right? And I do believe that, and I do think there's nothing in this world where it's not equivalent exchange, and I've talked about that as well. And there is value to travel. It's just not necessary. But for where I'm at in my life, I think this is going to be an extremely productive trip. So I've been self-employed now, strictly self-employed, for like 15 months. I started 2023, because we're 2024 now. I started 2023 fully self-employed, betting on myself. You know, I've always done some self-employment stuff, but I've always had a job to fall back on. It's the first time where like I'm on my own, and it's been an incredible experience. I definitely learned a lot about entrepreneurship, what it means to work for yourself. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the highs and lows of this goddamn roller coaster. And I had a couple things leading up to this. First and foremost, when I went to Mexico last time, like I said, I had a life-changing trip where I learned a lot about myself, my community, my goals, because I took myself out of my routine. But I've been mowing this idea back and forth because going back to Mexico, one, is a risk. There's cost involved. There is things I'm leaving behind that might not necessarily be there when I come back. And, you know, the world moves on. You know, the world will move on without me. I don't know how long I'm going for. I'll be back by summer because I love the summer in Vancouver. And also with my medical, I have to be in Canada 6 months a year. And just like getting my blood test, doing my routine scans to make sure everything's good, you know, it's good for me to be at home in my country. Now, I've been struggling with the decision back and forth. This year has been incredible and incredibly taxing, incredibly difficult, a lot of failures. There's been a ton of success, and I've accomplished a lot in my life, but I've failed a lot more, and I've failed a lot this year. I've tried a lot of things. You know, I've made decisions that cost me a lot of money, and that's what it means to be an entrepreneur, right? It means to learn to push through and try and build a life and a business that inspires and empowers people ethically while allowing myself to feed myself. And when I talked about going to a different country, there is energy to places. So where I live in Vancouver, I live about like really far. I live not in Vancouver. I live in a suburb of Vancouver, and I'm hitting like an hour of traffic sometimes going to work. I don't know if I talked about this in a prior episode. That's one thing I realized about Mexico, the city I'm going to, is everything was walking distance. And so when I did the math, if I'm going downtown 7 days a week and my commute is, let's say, sometimes 40 minutes, sometimes an hour, but I'm going to take into account like packing my car, you know, all the other things. Sometimes I got to get gas. So I made an hour average there and back. It's probably a little bit less, but let's say it's not. I'm going downtown at least 5 times a week, but before I went to Mexico, realistically, most weeks I was there 7 times a week. And I realized like I'm spending 14 hours of my waking days commuting. And that was really a good time for me to self-reflect. It was a good time for me to digest books and podcasts. And I valued it immensely, but time is really valuable. And how much time I have to my business and how much energy and what that took from me was a lot. And so that was the first thing. We also just had, I don't know what happened, but gas spiked up, right? I have a 6-cylinder car. It's not the most fuel efficient. I love my car. But gas is $2 a liter, so I got to equate for the cost of gas, the mileage I'm putting on my car, the cost of food. Like, it's become very, very expensive in Vancouver. And I really, really want to build my business. It's very important to me. You know, I've established KoiFit in 2020 with a vague idea of what I wanted to be, and I've restructured and pivoted a lot. A lot's changed since then. And I really think with what I'm working on now and the projects I have in mind, I think this is it. I think this is the thing that's going to last a couple of years, continue to grow, have the biggest impact on people. And so I want to go all in. I want to go all in. I want to give it everything I got, because if I fail on this, it won't be a question of did I do enough. And working in Vancouver, there's a couple things. First of all, like, the logic behind it was just, it was time. And then right after I booked my flight, I got so sick, but not like a normal sick. Like, I talked about my health quite a bit. And so when I don't mitigate my stress or rest enough, all my health issues come up, right? I get pretty severe symptoms, and literally my body doesn't work. Like, I just can't, and I feel dissociative, and I'm not in my body, and it's an extremely uncomfortable feeling that brings a lot of emotion, because it reminds me of the times where I was so ill I couldn't function. So it brings back a lot, right? And that happened, and it just kind of reaffirmed that, like, I got to remember to rest, and I can risk things like I'm gambling, but be intelligent, and my health is not something I want to gamble with. And there's a reoccurring thing that I think about a lot. Like, some of my favorite artists and fighters, when they're going into either like a vision quest or a retreat, they go away so they can create. They get into a space where they're separated from their mundane day-to-day routine. And routine is important, but when you're trying to do something completely different, I think leaving your routine is going to be good for my creativity and my productivity. My days here and like where I'm going to be training is really close to my home. So like sometimes my work is sporadic. I work with clients. I have a client at like 10 a.m. and I also have a client at like 8:15. And so I'm downtown for all that time. And my level of productivity, because of like my ADHD and my attention span, in the gym sometimes I try and do work, or at a coffee shop, is not the same as in like my home environment where there's no distraction. So I've set myself up in Mexico. I have a studio apartment. I rented it for 1 month. I don't know if I'm going to stay longer or what's going to happen. I'm really taking a leap of faith where I have some community, I have some friends there that are in a similar space that I can work on, which is important to me. So I can be inspired and pick their brains, and we can discuss these ideas. And also that I can train to feed my soul and do all the things I need to do with no distraction. And so I'm doing it. I fly out Sunday morning, first thing. I'll be there Sunday afternoon. This comes out, like you guys know, at midnight Monday morning. So I'm already in Mexico, and I'm embarking on something big. And I'm giving this all I got. I have some parameters which I'm keeping private for now, and I'm giving myself a timeline from which I'm giving my all into this. And if it's not starting to be more productive and lining up, and I'm not hitting my key performance indicators, I'm going to need to take a break. I'm going to need to go get a job and do the 9-to-5 thing and let my body and mind and spirit reset a little bit, because the last 15 months have been, nonstop work, 100-hour weeks. I can see the effect on my health. I can see the effect on my relationships. And I'm willing to do that, but it's for how long? Winners quit. I think it's not about quitting on everything, but winners understand when it's time to quit, when it's time to take a break. It becomes like strategy for warfare. Now, there's a few things that really helped me make the decision as well. And one of my favorite books is The Alchemist. The Alchemist talks about the language of the universe being omens. And it's something I didn't realize earlier, but my father talks about this all the time, so does my mom. I didn't realize that's where I got it from, but like, I don't believe in accidents. Of course, like, accidents happen, but there's a lot of weird synchronicities in my life. And I like to believe in the faith of angel numbers. And so seeing reoccurrent numbers often, to me, as I'm like pondering this leap of faith, gave me some confidence. And I had a client come in, and he had just come back from Mexico, and he's paying me, and he goes, "Hey, I have pesos in here." He's like, "I'm probably not going to go back to Mexico anytime soon." So he just gave me pesos as well, and I was like, seems like a sign. And it just feels like the universe is screaming at me to go back. And maybe I'm wrong, but I'm excited to do everything I can, and I'm never going to wonder what if. And why are you hearing it for the first time once I'm already there? I've noticed lately I'm not great at defending my energy. Despite doing the people-pleasing shit in the podcast we did last week, I've set boundaries, but like, when you really understand the value of your time, you don't give it away for free. You don't give it away unless it lines up with your ethos and your mission. And so I've been doing a lot of that. And I think it's time for me to be, quote unquote, a little bit more selfish and put it into myself. So I'm going into this community. I'm going to train and I'm going to make content for you guys and record the podcast. And I've launched my online academy. If you guys are interested in learning Muay Thai, that's a big project I'm working on, as well as something else that'll be coming in the announcements, which I have to be in Mexico to go do anyways. And like I said, I didn't want to share because it invites other people's opinions. It invites more information to overwhelm, and I really had to make this decision on my own, which did leave people feeling probably hurt or let down. But the people that love you will understand when you have to do things like this. And the concept of the evil eye is the last reason I didn't really share about it, because I had a friend that wanted to make a post on social media, and I was like, man, you can do it, but I want you to wait till I'm there. Because I've noticed for sure, I live my life out loud now more than ever. I basically share this open form diary with all of you about my strong opinions that are sometimes controversial. I post on social media almost every day with my art, and it's vulnerable, and I see the impact it has on the world. And we talk about energy. So the concept of the evil eye is that envy and jealousy, or it's not even necessarily envy or jealousy, but sometimes people don't see the struggle and don't think you deserve what you have. And I've been guilty of that. And I believe there's a tangible energy to that emits itself to me. And so I've decided to move more in secret, to talk about things when they're more concrete, because the value of my word as I record a podcast and talk to you guys and talk to myself on a microphone for 30 minutes every week, I'm realizing that what are the impact of words, what are the impact of sharing. And sometimes I'm pretty mindless and I'm just talking and I'll say something and I'll wonder why did I say that? And then I used to critic that as anxiety, because it's anxious. It's I shouldn't have done that. But now I think about more it's a curiosity. Why did I say that? What was my purpose? And a lot of times we're just kind of spewing bullshit. We're not being intentional with our words. We're just kind of talking and sharing information. And think about debates. Like people debate nowadays to win. And I've definitely been guilty about that, right? That's the competitive nature of being an athlete. But I want to learn to debate, and I'm working on it and being valuable with my words in a capacity to understand where the other person's coming from with deep empathy, because that's how you learn and grow. Someone who has complete polar opposite opinions than me, understanding that I value their intelligence because they're in my life. I value their opinions, that they too are shaped by their experience of this world, and they know things I don't, and I know things they don't. And honestly, when you approach debate that way, I think both people, or whoever the parties are involved, can leave with a lot more knowledge, empathy, and worst comes to worst, you didn't change your mind, but at least you understand things you didn't understand before. Now, moving on to now I'm in Mexico, let's talk about some things that have been popping up in my head as I'm doing, something. I wouldn't say it's not necessarily impulsive. I thought about this a lot. I felt through it a lot. It's scary. But as I'm doing this and the overwhelm and I'm sitting with my feelings and thoughts, there's a lot of things that come up that I'm that affected me more than I realized. Right? So one of the things I really understood recently is, so there's been some controversy about other podcasters. And the example is I'm conflicted because there's a part of me that didn't want to bring more attention to someone's controversy. And there's a part of me that wants to discuss it so we can have it open forum, because I'm sharing someone else's skeletons in their closet. But both Jay Shetty and Andrew Huberman, who are both, podcasts I've listened to quite a bit, they're both very intelligent men, are both caught in some pretty big scandals. And I've always wondered, what instigates a good person? Not instigates, that's not the right word. What do we identify a good person? Is it intention? Is it consequence? Is it action? Or is it far more up to us and our own interpretation? So for Huberman, I haven't even read the article. I've read comments about it. I guess I'm talking about a podcast. I should have probably read the article, but fuck it, we ball. Huberman, who talks about, being in therapy his whole life and his story, he talks about all the biohacking that can improve your quality of life and such. I guess a hit piece came out, so someone wrote an article, one of his ex-girlfriends, about her experience dating him. And granted, this is hearsay. It's like that telephone we play as a kid. Allegedly, she was on fertility treatments trying to get pregnant, and under the impression that they were in a monogamous relationship while he had 4 other partners. Now, people are trying to crucify him, and I don't really know how I feel about it, because the reality is, like, I'm reading someone who had a bad falling out with this person's one side of the story, and it's easy to come from a place where emotion is triggered and you feel deep empathy for the quote-unquote victim of those circumstances. But we have no idea what really happened behind all that, how much of it is true. And the age of the internet makes everything so accessible. You can find out so much about a person because we put our lives on the internet, we leave comments, we leave a trail, and it's there forever. If I say something to someone and they repeat it, that's hearsay. When you write it in a form, or when you write it on a comment, or when you post it on social media, it's there forever. And context, which is something we're going to talk about in a later episode about my journey through my spiritual practice, is everything. Because I can clip, and like you know this with reality TV, I can clip anything and make it seem like any story is true. And AI bots now are coming out, and like that's another thing that's scary about having a podcast. You're seeing AI bots give out information from a person that never said those things, but they know how that person's voice works. Where before they could like clip and cut words together in sentences and make someone say something they never said without the context of what they said. And so as a society and humans that we love to be outraged, I think it's something we have to be super, super aware of. And now back to like what's good and evil is like Martin Luther King. I don't know much about his story, but we all know he made a divine, positive difference in this world. Now, if you found out Martin Luther King did all that and also was in the exact same situation as Andrew Huberman, does that make him not a good person? Or, you know, like that's a question, right? Like I think everyone has had negative impacts on the world around them or the people around them, whether they want to or not, right? What's that famous quote is Bob Marley. It's like, everyone's going to hurt you, find out who's worth it. Something along those lines. I just butchered Bob Marley's words. But yeah, or like imagine Genghis Khan, who's one of the greatest conquerors ever, who was responsible for killing millions. But what if you also found out in his day in life, he saved 100,000 orphans, right? I think we as humans are so quick to put people into boxes of good or evil or selfish or narcissistic, or like we're always trying to create these labels for people, and I don't think it's that simple. I think really, like when it comes to online personalities, you only get one side. Like even all y'all listening to this, you get one side of me. There's a side of me that's real goofy that you don't see on the podcast. There's a side of me that does like violence. I fought, you know, I still train, I still spar. There's a part of me that gets excited by that. There's a part of me that really likes dumb videos that you wouldn't expect me to. And so I think we need to understand that we all have different values, and like who the asshole is in a story, who is wrong in a story, is really up to like our own interpretation and our own beliefs and values. And if you want to test this out, this is a good test with your like romantic partners or business partners. There are tons of forums, particularly on Reddit, where it's like, am I the asshole? And the person shares a story about what they did, you know? And you'll see that in the comments, people argue about, oh, you're the asshole because of this, you're not the asshole because of this. And that's based on your own values and opinions and who you can empathize with. So I think at the end of the day, whether Huberman did something awful or great, or there's lack of information, or it's a total blatant lie, I think he caused a lot of people to take care of their health. I think he had a really positive impact on the world. And I think I don't know him personally, I just think he intended to do that. And now the idea behind like, oh, but he's monetizing it. The reality is like money makes the world go round. You know, like I would love to continue to live the life I do, way less busy. I need money. We all need money to survive. And when you're not working a 9 to 5, if you understand the amount of hours that go into creating content, releasing podcasts constantly, doing things like that, I think people deserve to be paid for the value that they bring to our lives. And Andrew Huberman is someone who's brought a lot of value to a lot of people. And it's not someone I listen to religiously, but I know a lot of people that have incorporated his protocols into their lives to optimize and improve their quality and overall happiness. And that's a really good thing. And if he continues to do that, then maybe, why would you discredit him because of something that happened with a personal relationship of his? Those are my thoughts. Like, I get the argument that, like, if he lied to someone he loved, of course he can lie to us. That's where discernment comes in, right? It's up to you. Like, I have trolls on my comments all the time, and there's people that give me great compliments all the time. But one of my things, I try not to engage with them. And I'm like, this content isn't for you. If you don't find the value, it's not for you. You don't get it, it's not for you. Not everything is for everyone. Not even all the food is for everyone. Some people are allergic to rice, which is like the most consumed calorie in the world. So those are what's going on in my mind. I'm in Mexico. Wish me luck. Next week, we're going to have a spicy episode. I'm excited about it. I'm going to have the week to really ponder and be out of my comfort zone and in a totally new space. But I'm bringing all my podcast equipment with me. And I will be releasing, I think I know what the episode is, but I'm not going to announce it yet, which is going to be a heavy one, and I think one people will be really interested in. And as always, we end with a quote. Thank you guys for tuning in. Let me pull up this quote here. I took a screenshot. It's something I posted on social media quite a while ago. And I had a conversation. So, interesting story. My dad met a guy flying back from Toronto or flying to Toronto, I don't really know, who lived in Vancouver. And he's like, Matt, like, you need to meet this guy. I feel it in my gut, and you guys know some of the same people because the guy trains. And if you're in the martial arts industry, you kind of tend to, the martial arts field, like when you train, you tend to know some of the same people. Anyways, I met with him and we chatted, and my dad told me, he's where you want to be in 4 years. He's 4 years older than me. And I really got a lot of that conversation. Because I was face to face with someone with similar values and goals in life. And I could almost look at myself objectively to be like, maybe this is how I come across. Anyways, with that little anecdote, this is when I used to post my podcast basically on Instagram. This is what I posted on May 5th, 2020. It's not my story, but it was a lesson I'd heard and I wanted to share about it. It's a long one. It's a story. There was a fisherman who lived on a remote island. Every day he would wake up at sunrise and go out on a small fishing boat, catch a few small fish, come back to town, trade some of his catches for other things his family needed. Then he would take a nap with his wife, play with his kids, and spend his evenings with friends, playing guitar, laughing, sharing stories, and just enjoying each other's company. One day, he's out in the ocean fishing, and another large boat pulls up next to him, and it's captained by a businessman. And they get to chatting, and the businessman proposes an idea. He says, if you were to catch a few more fish every day, you could sell them. You could save that money and buy a bigger boat. Then you could catch even bigger fish and sell those fish and make even more money. And you see the fisherman kind of ponder that and he's like, then what? The businessman's like, well, if you work hard and you save, you could buy a small fleet of boats and you could hire other fishermen to fish for you, and then you'd make even more money. The fisherman's like, pondering the idea. And he's like, and then what? And he's like, then if you worked really, really hard, eventually you could keep growing your fishing fleet, start a company, and gradually grow until you can export your fish. Then you'd own an international fishing company, making more money than you can even imagine. And so the fisherman asks, and then what? Well, he goes, then you could sell your company, and you can live the rest of your life doing anything you please. You could spend your time with your loved ones, play with your kids, relax with your wife. Heck, you could even keep fishing, but just as a hobby. And I loved that story. And although the story has never changed, what I learned from it is different. Okay? And that's why I love these stories where there's multiple lessons and it's where you're at in life that you take away. When I first heard this, I was like, yeah, of course, don't chase money. Do things that you want to do. And, if you have enough to survive and you have people you love and community, then why would you want any more? And there's value in that. And it's very Zen Buddhist. And then there's the entrepreneur in me, self-employed, trying to build a business that looks at this and goes, that would be cool. The fisherman has a cool life. But what about all the experiences he gets building that business? What about all the people he gets to help and the lives he gets to impact? Right? And for me, what I'm trying to build in my job lines up with my life mission. To inspire and empower people and make people feel good and make people have the confidence to create lives they love. Process of building something, you're also building yourself. Learning and business is not a spectator sport. You can read all the books you want. You can listen to all the podcasts. You learn through doing. Same as martial arts, I have this online academy that I've launched. And you can watch it all you want, but you got to take the information I give and the drills that I prescribe and the information I give and apply it into your practice. And with that, I leave you. Thank you for tuning in. I love you all. And tune in next week for another episode. Cheers.